Hello and welcome again. In this lesson, we're going to be implementing a role-based authentication process. Um, so you could have some scenarios where you want to define what each user can do. For example, you want to have a user that acts as the store owner or as the admin, and you want that user to be, or you want users with that type of account to be the only ones that can, for example, create new books and update books and delete books. And you still want only authenticated users to access your books. So what we would do is to create um, a, or rather, we can implement a role-based authentication. So let's do that in a basic way here. So to do that, first we will do something called seeding. And seeding is when you um, input some data into your application beforehand. So that means that you do not need to create a route to um, create those documents in your database. You just need to call a particular function. So the reason we're using seeding is because we do not want to register people with admin accounts from the register route. We just want admin accounts to be created by default in our application. So to do this, we're going to create a new folder called seeders. And in this folder, I'm going to create a new function called admin.js. And what we want to do is check if there is an admin account. If there is none, we want to create an admin account. All right, so to do this, first of all, let's update our user model. Let's add a new field called role, and this is going to be a string. And enum values would be regular or admin. And we can also specify defaults, which means anytime you create a user, the default value will be regular, except you specify that you want it to be admin. So when we do this, that means when any user registers a new account, by default, their role is going to be regular, and we can only have admin accounts from the ones we're going to create right here. So let's implement this now by saying const user equals require, and then I'll navigate to the models and the user model, and I need to save this. Okay, now exports dot seed admin will be a function, and this time, since it's not a controller function, it's not going to take in request and response. The only thing we want it to do is check if there's an admin account. So to check, user.find1, and to check for a user whose role is admin. So if there is an admin account, if there's an error, let's just console.log error. Else, if, or rather, let's return the error or throw the error, so it stops the application. If there is an admin, let's just return admin accounts already exists, and put a curly braces here. Now if there is no admin, now we can create a new admin. So we can now say user.create, and now we can create our admin accounts. And let's just say first name is book, and the last name is goblin, and username is book goblin, and password. Okay, now we have to hash the password. Okay, so role is admin, and when this user is created, error or user, if there's an error, again let's just throw the error. Else we can now say we need to hash the password, so let's require bcrypt. So const bcrypt equals require bcrypt.js, and then we can now generate sort with 10 as the rounds, and then the callback function if there's an error or sort, and again if there's an error just throw the error, or else we can now say bcrypt dot hash, and the password we want to hash. Okay, so let's say let password be equal to admin123. So bcrypt dot hash password with the sort and a function error hash, and if there's an error throw the error. A little mistake here. Else we want the user's password, user.password, to be the hashed password, and then we can say user.save, and add the callback. If there's an error, throw the error. Else we want to return admin accounts created. All right, so if this is done, we're going to see the message admin account created. So let's call this function in the index.js file, and let's just say seeders. So let's say const let's navigate to the folder first, /seeders /admin, and we want to call the seed admin function, and let's just say console.log seed admin, and call the function also, and let's save, and let's check our terminal for the results. Okay, it says undefined. There's something we're not doing correctly. Um, I think we can just check the Mongo shell. Let's check the Mongo shell db.users.find, and let's see if okay. So the user was created correctly. The role is admin. The first name is book, last name goblin, just as we indicated. So I think the error is that our function is not returning something correctly. But more importantly, our function has been called. So let's just move on with that. So I can comment this out from the index.js file. Okay, I can just comment this out and save. All right, so now we have a user with the role as admin, and now we can implement this in our authentication process. So let's head back to our code where we have the book routes right here, and add authentication to the post request, the put request, and the delete request. So I'm going to go ahead to say authenticate user right here, and also right here. So this means that the user has to be logged in before they can do anything on the website, on the application rather. So let's try to log in with the admin login details. Um, this time, let's say um, the username we used was Book Goblin, and the password is admin123. So let's log in. Book Goblin, and password is admin123, and let's send that request. All right, so the user is logged in. Let's try a wrong password, and we can see it's incorrect. So our user was correctly registered, and if I send again, all right. So now let's add something to the login route. In the signed JWT, let's add the role of that user. So found user dot role, and let's also do that in the register route. And let's say role is new user dot role. Let's save that. Now if I log in again, now this token contains the role of this user, and you can see that if I do a console.log here, before the next function, if I say console.log decoded token and I save, if I send this request, this get books request, and I add the authorization header, and this time let's use the token for the admin, and I send this here. Okay, now let's check the console. You can see that the role is now included in the decoded payload. Right, so now what we want to check is for this role, We want to check if it is an admin or a user account, a regular user account. So we want to check. So we're going to create two more functions, or rather just one more function. Exports dot check if admin request response next equals to this, and this will be an arrow function. So we want to check if the logged in user is an admin, and if the person is an admin, we want to allow the person to continue in an admin protected route. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make this user's data available throughout the life cycle of the request. What I mean is that right here in the book controller function, there is no way for us to know who this user is because we only have that in the decoded token variable here. So we can pass this value across the request by passing it into a request property. So the request object can take in random properties. For example, I can say request.user equals decoded token. So now let me console.log requests.user here in the book controller. And now you can see what I'm trying to explain. So let's try, we are on the fetch books route. So let's take the ID off and then send this request. And now let's check the console. Now you can see the request.user is this object that contains the decoded token. Just so you're sure that I'm fetching the correct data, let's make this an object. And let's say user is the request.user. And let me send the request again. Now you can see user is this object here. So the request object is designed to take in random or custom properties, so you can input a value that you want to use across the request lifecycle. You can input it at any point of the request. So what we want to do now is check the request.user object right here. So if request.user.role is not equal to admin, we want to just say return res.status 41.json, and the message will be that this route is restricted to admin users. Else, we just want to call next. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to call this middleware in the book route on the post request. So before I do that, let's see how the post request is working at the moment. I can send a new book and use title, author, and category. So let's just say title is blah blah, and the author is Mr. Nice Man, and the category is fiction. All right, so now let me create this book, and you can see because our route is protected, it works. If I take off the headers, the authorization header, you'd see that it sends back an error message. If I include it, it works correctly. But this means that any logged in user can create a book. What we want is that only admin users can create new books. So now we're going to pass in the new middleware we created to the book routes, and we can now require it here. Check if admin. So in the post request, we can say post/books. Then first we call the Authenticate User middleware, which will check that the authorization header was sent. Next, we want to check if admin, and that will also check if the role of the user is admin before creating the book. Okay, now we can send this request again, and it still works because the user here is an admin. Now let's try to use the regular user account, or let's just create a new user and just call this user random user, and let's just say random user, and let the password just be 123456, and let's send. Okay, now we have a token. Let's take this token and use it in this request, and if I try to update this, okay, so what's going on? Okay, now I can paste and send. And now you can see it says this route is restricted to admin users. And if I check the console, you see that is because the role of this user is regular. So this is a simple way you can implement further authorization on your application if you so desire. If you want to have role-based authentication, if you want to have different levels of authorization, you can just simply implement it in this way. So in the next lesson, we'll be cleaning up our code some much more and rounding up on the Bookstore application. And I'll see you in the next lesson.